I actually agree 100% with them. The word just does mean struggle, and it's important to keep in mind that struggle takes on many forms. In the former days, before the modern era, struggle was just through violence, because Europeans, Jews, and Buddhists and Hindus weren't going to let Muslims come in and, brainwash them and then take over through propaganda. It was just a fight to the end. Nobody wanted them in, and that sort of thing went on. So yes, it was a holy war through violence, and that's how it was understood. But the word itself is very telling that it means struggle in its original Arabic form, because as it's understood today by groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, and CARE, jihad is not just by the sword. You have jihad of the tongue, propaganda, jihad of the pen, more propaganda, jihad of money, financing, jihad of anything, in other words, that is a struggle. It doesn't have to be violence, anything, lying, okay? If it helps empower Islam, which is what jihad's about, then that's jihad. So they're actually correct when they say it means struggle and not holy war. But it's all struggle to help empower Islam one way or the other, whether it's violently or non-violently.
Let me give you my definition and see if you
Sit
agree
here.
with it. Jihad is the legal, compulsory, communal effort to expand the territories ruled by Muslims at the expense of territories ruled by non-Muslims. Note, it's about territory. It's not about religion. It's not about expanding the faith. It's about expanding the control of territory by Muslims.
No, I agree with that, and that's absolutely right. Jihad is about expanding, and the theory of jihad is the whole globe is under Sharia governance. And if you don't have to be a Muslim. You can be a dhimmi, third-class citizen, Jew, Christian, pay jizya, live as a third-class citizen. That's okay, but it is about hegemony and control, ultimately, and as much territory as they can get. And, there's one Quranic verse, I believe it's 839, that talks about jihad just goes on until everything is subsumed under the power of Allah.
I would say dhimmis are second-class citizens. Hindus and Buddhists, they're the third-class citizens because they have no standing in the Quran. Why are the historians so blind? You've quoted them, you've alluded to them. Does it depend on you, who's not at a university, to produce a work like this, whereas the university historians don't do this? Why?
Because of Edward Said. Because of his book Orientalism, which came out sometime in the 70s. And the whole book was just dedicated to lambasting the previous scholars, Orientalists, Arabists, who would have said the same sorts of thing that I would say. The people that I quoted, a lot of those were Orientalists, including Bernard Lewis. And rather than debunk them, historically, it took on a more emotional kind of feel, which is, you know what, you're saying negative stuff. This is because you're racist. Sounds familiar. This is because you don't like the other. And you got a whole new crop of historians who are just dedicated to rewriting the history in a positive pro-Islamic way.
So if there were no Edward Said and Orientalism in 1978, all would be fine?
No, because Edward Said did not do this. Edward Said, like many people, I believe a lot of the people that we always think, Karl Marx did something so important. I just think that the spirit of the age was there, and if it wasn't him, someone else would pop up. So if it wasn't Edward Said, someone else would have come up. I mean, as you know, his book is nonsense. So there was nothing special about it, but the spirit of the age was ready for that sort of, we're bad, they're good, we've been misunderstanding them, we've been projecting hatred on them, we need to start a new chapter, let's stop talking about this evil Orientalist stuff, which is just racist, et cetera, et cetera.
Any prospect for change in Muslim understanding of jihad? Or is this going to go on to the end of time?
Well, here's my thing, I have no problem saying that there are Muslims who don't believe in this, okay? But the analogy I like to give is this. Oskar Schindler. As you all know, Oskar Schindler did a lot of great things to help Jews and other undesirables in the Nazi regime. But he himself was a Nazi, in fact, a ranking Nazi. So do we come and say, well, he is an example of moderate Nazism, therefore let's not talk negatively about Nazism? Because look what Oskar Schindler said. No one does that. We all say he may have been a nominal Nazi, but in his heart, when it came down to it, he did the right thing. I think there's a lot of Muslims that fall into that, but their actions, to me, do not indicate that Islam, in other words, their actions, one can argue, are in spite of pure Islamic teaching. And, but the bottom line is, you're always going to have a core who believes in the original teachings of Islam because they're black and white. You have Muhammad and Hadith saying whoever leaves his religion apostatizes, kill him, et cetera, et cetera. And it really doesn't matter about numbers. There's all these polls that I've seen where most Muslim countries, the majority of them support ISIS. I mean, that's not, but let's benefit of the doubt. Let's say there's only 15% of Muslims who have that worldview. That translates into about 200 million people. Okay, so it's not reassuring to tell me most Muslims don't believe in this when I know there's 200 million who do, and all you need is one of them to blow himself up. And so it's a problem.
Thank you, but you didn't answer my question.
Will it change? Will it change? No, you're right, actually. Yeah, I went off on a tangent. Your question is, do I think it's going to change?
Can it change?
It has to, you know, the Encyclopedia of Islam, Emil Tywin, you probably know his name because you actually fixed it once. The entry for jihad in the Encyclopedia of Islam, which is very authoritative and precedes the era of political correctness, he talks about jihad and then he says, Islam has to be remade all over from beginning to end for this doctrine to be eliminated because it's so integral to it. So, you know, does that mean a Muslim can't come and say, I reject jihad and be sincere? Yeah, because every human is individual. But I don't think it's, for it to really be pulled out is really, it's no different than saying, you know, you don't have to fast or pray or, you know, say the Shahada or that sort of stuff. And as you know, a lot of schools of thought say it's a sixth pillar of, you know, Islam. So it's a fundamental part. To take it out, you know, how do you justify that? Can a Muslim or a Muslim group or a sect do that? Yes. But I think by and large, the majority won't. That's my opinion.
Did you hear a yes or a no? Yes or no? Can the doctrine of jihad evolve over time and not be what it has been historically?
For some people, but for some it won't. I mean, because when we talk about a doctrine, everyone's different. You know, look at all these different, you know, Jews and Christians and different sects, Orthodox and liberal, right?
No.
But the actual teaching,
That's not an answer.
but the actual
You have
teaching will be
doctrinal
ascribed to.
changes.
What's that?
There are doctrinal changes in religion.
Do all practitioners follow this change? No.
Slavery was something that was part of Judaism and indentured servitude.
All right, I'll answer. I'm not optimistic. It's not going to change.
As far as I'm aware, there nobody, no Jews, no Christians saying, you know what, let's give slavery another try.
Right.
Okay, that's a
Right.
change in doctrine.
I think for Muslims to reach that point, they're just going to leave Islam because the whole thing teaches slavery, teaches subjugation of women, teaches
You're saying no.
hatred.
You're saying no.
I'm saying no. I'm
Jihad
saying
is
no.
integral to this.
But there are going to be the exceptions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of
But
course.
by and large, no.
Doctrinally,
It's ironclad.
Least place to be optimistic. What I've seen, all of the organizations in which I'm involved, is that in an open society like the United States, you can only go downhill. And I'll give you one concrete example, and it's exemplary in all of these types of cases. At the time of 9/11, there was a rabbi in Great Neck, a liberal rabbi, who immediately brought members of the Islamic Center from Westbury the following week. And to quote him, he said, his name was Jerome Davidson, if someone to thank someone, might as well do it by name. And he said that the reason we brought our brothers and sisters here is to show that we don't blame them for 9/11. Now, of course, nobody blames a Muslim in the street for 9/11. We don't go around beating people up in the street in this country as a rule. It's not something we do in America. The following week, the then president of the mosque, someone with whom you're familiar, Ghazi Khan, thank God long since dropped dead. Ghazi Khan stated in the mosque, not knowing that there was a reporter from a not so pro-Israel newspaper, Newsday, and he stated that 9/11 was a conspiracy between the Mossad and the Central Intelligence Agency to shame Islam. These are the same people that are utilized in interfaith gatherings all over Long Island. The mosque in Westbury is the most respected institution. So the point is, in this society where people defend Islam as a blanket rule because of political correctness, I agree that the answer is no, because with all the organizations, Middle East Forum, Center for Security Policy, Stand With Us, no one can overcome this desire to be politically correct, and the alliance between the left and Islam is very peculiar.
Is there a question in there that I missed?
The leftist Islamist alliance, how do we break it? That is the root of the problem in this country.
The leftist Islamist alliance, it's to stop playing their game. Okay, I think one of the biggest problems with conservatives, anti-Islamists, etc., is they ultimately play the game. Okay, they agree to the paradigm that's being established. I see this in Fox News, which is supposed to be conservative. All the boundaries are the ones that are acceptable to the left, and then they get in and try to wrestle with them in that. You shouldn't even deal with
But
that.
his question is,
Oh.
how does one break the alliance between the left and the Islamists?
Between the left and the Islamists. Well, I think the alliance between the left and the Islamists is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what it comes down to. And the left hates America. Islamists hate America. They hate traditional, American lifestyle. They hate different religions. Both of them. I mean, think about it. The left doesn't like any religion. They're often atheist. Muslims feel the same way, but for different reasons. So I think they have, and this is why you often find leftists who will scream about, the patriarchy of Europe or the Christian patriarchy. And they'll say nothing about Islam, which is so much worse. Or they'll scream about someone didn't bake a cake, a Christian bakery didn't bake a cake for a homosexual group, but they won't say anything about Muslims throwing them off the roof and executing them. And because I think their real hatred is both focused on traditional America.
Questions, please, quick, brief, to the point.
My question relates to the well-known silence of the mainstream Christian organizations about the atrocities being perpetrated against Christians in the Middle East. And in particular, there is one mainstream Christian organization that is by far the most powerful that has ever existed, which is the Catholic Church, that might possibly make a difference. To what do we attribute the silence of the mainstream organizations, and especially the Catholic Church, to the persecution and slaughter of Christians throughout the Middle East?
Well, I think the first thing, the question I think is why are so many immensely powerful Christian organizations with the Catholic Church at the head not caring or responding to what's happening to the persecuted Christians in the Islamic world and elsewhere? And I think it's normal for a Christian to sympathize with a fellow Christian, or just anyone with a sense of humanitarianism. But I think a lot of these groups, from what I'm hearing, are not really, they're not Christian. This Pope seems like a socialist. He's more interested in socialist issues. He's always kowtowing to Islam. He meets with the Sheikh of Al-Azhar, your alma mater, in the most prestigious university in Cairo, but it's in Cairo, but considered in the Islamic world, where they basically teach the same things ISIS teach, including they use textbooks about cannibalism and enslaving and destroying churches and oppressing Christians. And he goes and hugs him and talks with him, and they both send out a statement about equality and love. And so I think a lot of these people are just like the war college, just like anyone who wants to capitulate and not look like the bad guy.
Let me say the word Regensburg.
You're talking about Benedict? Exactly. So Pope Benedict, he gave that the address, Regensburg, I think 2006, which ironically, he did something that I did. He quoted history. Muslims rioted. He quoted Emperor Manuel, another Byzantine emperor, who in the 1300s had a debate with Muslims. And he said, quote, "Show me one thing that Muhammad brought that was new other than bloodshed, slavery, and destruction." And the conversation was actually about how Manuel's belief of God is God's rational, whereas Allah is not irrational, etc. And that was Benedict's point. He wasn't even attacking Islam. But because he did that, and Benedict, in my opinion, is much better than Francis on these issues, that's why Al-Azhar cut him off. They wouldn't even talk to him. So that's the standard. You can't have an open debate. And so do you want to be the bad guy like Benedict, or do you want to be the good guy the media loves like Francis and Muslims love? And it's hypocrisy.
Rioting, violence, and murder as a result of this.
Oh, yeah, in Somalia, a nun was shot dead and churches were burned.
What importance would you place
So the question is, I think you're asking me what I think of what we would categorize as honestly moderate Muslim groups in America. So my thing is, a lot of these the problem with these moderate Muslims is I think they can give people a wrong understanding of the situation. Okay, if you're here in America and Muslims are a small minority, and then you have a large number who are talking about how, yes, Islam is violence and we denounce it, et cetera, et cetera. Problem is these people have no influence in the Islamic world, where 99% of the Muslims are. They don't even know their names, and they would laugh at them, maybe behead them if they heard them. And so they may be sincere, and I can't talk about any individual one of them. I don't know that what they're trying to do, but I imagine a lot of them are sincere. But I don't think they have much influence, and they only give a false impression, because when you side with them and they come and talk, et cetera, we start thinking that, oh look, there's a lot of moderates out there. They're going to help us change it, but they have zero influence really in the Islamic world.
Let me disagree with that one. If there's any hope, it's in the anti-Islamist Muslims, who are indeed weak and few, but they are thinking, they are acting, they are growing, and one day one hopes that they will offer an alternative to Muslims, which is modern, which is not jihadi, which is not misogynistic, and the like. So maybe they'll fail, you could be right, but maybe they'll succeed. So don't preemptively ignore them.
No.
Give them a chance.
I'm
Give them
talking,
support.
I should have added, I'm talking about the American ones.
Yeah.
Now in the Middle East, there are these moderates who are outspoken, and these guys and women I support, and I think they're the real deal, and they could have an influence. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is it's not about moderates telling us what to believe. They're talking to the wrong people. It's not us. You need to talk to your co-religionists. And as it happens, they don't have many here, and a lot of them maybe won't listen to them. But in the Islamic world, there is that movement, and they are under a lot of pressure, and people do talk to them, and they do get around in the media in the Islamic world. So they, personally, I think, if we want to have hope, it could be in those people.
Final question.
Yes, so my question is related to some of the others that have been posed. I just want to preface it by saying that I'm a Christian pastor who has, like most, Islam kind of hit my radar in 9/11, where I served in recovery efforts. But having heard this information and having studied this for the past 6 years, and your account is probably one of the most comprehensive I've read in recent, probably last year. How do we take it from a grassroots level back into our churches, back into our synagogues, and help the people we labor with, help them understand and apply this? So
the question is, for those of us who agree with what I'm saying, with what Daniel's saying, and I think we all do here, how do we bring it to our colleagues, co-religionists, and so forth? Is that your question? Well, by doing this, by actually just spreading the word. The media is not going to help us, it has to be done on a grassroots level, and just one by one, trying to get converts to our cause, which is the cause of truth and reality, of course. Other than that, we don't have many allies out there, including in the large media, including the conservative media oftentimes. So just word of mouth, creating grassroots groups, there's a lot of them working together, all these little groups. Maybe they should all become one large coalition instead of just everyone and that sort of thing. But I'm not the best person to ask. Daniel would be, because I'm not really at the fore of the activist issue. But
I don't either.
Yeah.
But I would say get educated.
Yeah.
Read books like this. Understand the subtleties of it, the history of it, the opportunities, the Muslim allies. It's a lot of hard work, but I would say from the vantage point of the last quarter century, the people are far more educated than they were. I mean, one could not use the word jihad 25 years ago in the public discourse. People did not know what it meant. Today they do. Islamism, not a word one could use. So there's a lot of education that needs to be a lot more. So, Dr. Ruiz.
Oh, thank you again. Stay with me because you have the microphone on.
Okay.
Just if I could, squeeze in one question while Howard Teach comes up. to join me here.
To me?
Question to you.
Okay.
You said there are moderate leaders in the Middle East. Might they include
I didn't say leader, but okay, yeah.
President of Egypt or the King of Jordan or?
So I'll talk, I'm more familiar with President Sisi. And he really exemplifies what's going on. In my opinion, there's two sides. Some say he's a moderate, some say he's an Islamist. What I can tell you is he's said a lot of positive things that are unprecedented for a Muslim president, and he's done positive things. He's gone to Coptic churches during their Christmas and Easter and congratulated them, celebrated with them, which Mubarak never did. Morsi, of course, the late Morsi never did, and all the others. So he's done things, he's said good things. A few years ago, I think it was actually January 1st, I believe maybe 2013 or so, he came out and in a speech in front of Al-Azhar and all the leading imams and just basically said, we got to do something. Our religion is terrorizing the world. Surely we can do something. So I think he's sincere. But on the other hand, I also see the problem, which is he as one man cannot do this top down. Egypt is an Islamic society. The moment that he starts attacking and trying to redefine the Quran, the Hadith, the teachings of Islam, is the moment he gets attacked and killed. So he's trying to play a fine line. He can say and do as much as he can, and that's actually a very good question, because here's someone who has said a lot of good, sincere things, I believe, and right now Egypt, as far as Islamism goes and the persecution of Copts, is probably worse than ever in the modern era. Yeah, and so you see that sort of, it's not going to happen top down. How do you change a society that's so permeated with a 14th century old ideology? One man's not going to do it.
Well, thank you again,
Thank you.
Raymond Abraham.
Thank you.